anything like some of our viewers, you've probably got sick and tired of all this speculation over, is the strategic reserve, Bitcoin strategic reserve coming? Is it going to be solidified? Seems like every week there's a new one proposed and they never seem to go anywhere. But what about taking a step back, away from the federal level, away from the nation state level, and actually starting to look at it in a bit more granular detail? Because what if I told you we're seeing big moves, really incremental moves at a state level within the US that are going to have real long-term dramatic effects? Welcome to 1% BTC. I'm Dominic, this is David, and today we're going to take you through some of the most bullish news that you might have heard. So once again, none of this is financial advice. We are just two guys who love Bitcoin that enjoy spending time on the internet. Please consult a fiduciary or financial advisor before making any investment decisions. All investing is risky. Investing in Bitcoin and digital assets is particularly risky. As always, although we are Bitcoiners, we do try and provide a balanced view. We use models to try and take the narrative out from the facts. But once again, our facts can be outdated and our models can be wrong. Please do your own research.
And a reminder for our viewers, just real briefly, please like and subscribe and comment. We'd love to hear from you. And it really helps us generally provide stories and content that's useful for you. So please let us know what you want.
What's the best way for them to do that, David?
In their comments, please, or you go to our website and you could enter your comments there as well. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And please do that, guys. We're always on the lookout for the stuff that you want to see. So, big bullish news that seems like old news, but actually it is completely new news, because there's one thing to say you're going to do something and there's the second thing to actually double down and do it. So Texas has officially made history as the first US state to purchase Bitcoin. It purchased approximately $5 million worth of Bitcoin using funds authorized under the Senate Bill 21, which created the one of the world's first state-level strategic Bitcoin reserves. So the initial buy was executed via BlackRock's IBIT ETF, and it precedes Texas moving to direct self-custody once contracts are finalized. So multiple other US states have passed Bitcoin reserve bills, but Texas is the first one to actually deploy treasury funds and initiate a sovereign-style reserve. So I know, David, you and I talk about watch what they do, not what they say, but I mean, I love this. This, for once, is positive. Yeah. It's someone actually like saying they're going to do something and actually doing it. So really great to see. Now, in terms of narrative manipulation, luckily, because the story, as many see it, isn't the actual purchase. It's the fact that the bill was passed. So many see this as old news. So therefore, a lot of the stories that you're seeing coming out, the tool has picked up. The manipulation level is actually pretty low. The narrative, however, it's largely based on facts, and it's celebratory of it. It frames Texas as a bold pro-Bitcoin frontier-style innovator, and I love the fact that you used the term frontier-style, obviously with Texas and the sort of frontier history. Obviously, it does promote feelings and emotions of optimism, confidence, legitimacy within the US, and obviously the main drivers for those emotions are obviously words like the first ever state, and there's obviously a strong institutional framing. Obviously, it mentions IBIT and the BlackRock ETF, etc. So what are the facts? I am very happy to say the purchase is fully confirmed by state officials, public legislation, and multiple independent sources. Texas did indeed purchase the full $5 million in Bitcoin via BlackRock's IBIT on November 20th, 2025, which means they bought the dip, which tells, I kind of think that not a coincidence. Obviously, I don't know, but I do like to think that a state out there has enough knowledge of Bitcoin to know when maybe they should be buying. So Texas has become the first US state. The ETF buy is a temporary placeholder until direct self-custody arrangements are finalized. Another thing which is massively bullish, the fact that they are doing, as David and I always promote, which is at least consider self-custody options and having ownership of your private keys. And also the early gain adds immediate political validation. So obviously, since their purchase, the price as of today, the time of recording, has gone up. So it does add a bit of validation to Texas for having the nous to do this. So given the fact that the original story was that the Texas Reserve was already announced, this is kind of a follow on from this. I scored this as a 2. I'm not going to give you any hints. I'm just going to say that I was wrong.
Okay.
So have a guess there, David.
Wow.
Give us a bit of where your head's at.
You know, when I first read this, I did think it was a repeat of old news. Like, it's nothing new, but they formally, I mean, Texas is known as the Lone Star State, right? And there's a big movement that wants to make Texas its own country, right? They want to separate from the United States and become
seed.
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at the facts here, they've allocated public tax dollars to buy Bitcoin, right? That is huge. Although it's only 5 million, right? This sets the precedence here. And as we've discussed in previous videos, it triggers nation state game theory, right? They have the first mover advantage at the state level. This is huge. Like, I think,
correct me if I'm wrong, Texas's economy is pretty big, isn't it? I heard it was like top, if you took it as its own country, like you mentioned, isn't it like top 10?
Is it? You're probably right. You're probably right.
I heard it was top 10. Like, it's bigger. The economy is bigger than Russia, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's massive. For them leading the way, I mean, their slogan is "We do everything big in Texas," right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've got another. They allocated $10 million, so hopefully they go big in Texas and go for the 10, and then go bigger in Texas and go for more. But obviously, the fact that the price has gone up does give them a bit of validation. So, David, come on, I'm going to need to nail you down for a.
Oh yeah.
For a score.
Okay. I'm going to be quite high. You know, so in answer to your question about GDP, so Texas has about $2.7 trillion in GDP. So they are massive. So they're considered, if you were to kind of make Texas its own country, it would be the 8th largest country in the world.
I thought it was top 10.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
In perspective, I know that the GDP of Australia is 1.7 trillion. So yeah, wow. Texas is massive.
Wow. So in terms of the score, if you were to nail me down for a score, it would be a 5.
5.
Maybe close to a 6.
No, I got in there before you corrected yourself, because you're close. You were close with this one.
Okay.
So obviously, look, the narrative of them leading a new wave of US state level Bitcoin adoption, makes you think that every state is going to do this. Obviously, it's not that strong. Yeah, narrative seems really strong, but mainly because a lot of the articles, for some reason, focus on the idea that every state is now going to do this. The tool was correctly picked up. You can't verify that. So the tool has basically called out that being the first US state to actually buy Bitcoin is symbolically powerful, because it puts Bitcoin directly onto a government balance sheet inside one of the biggest economies in the world. And the tool actually called out that it's the 8th largest economy. So even though the initial purchase size is small, the signal is massive. A major US state is treating Bitcoin as a legitimate reserve asset, similar to gold. This carries political ideology and institutional weight that far exceeds the dollar value involved. So you called out the fact that 5 million is not a lot, but according to the tool, doesn't matter. So you remember in a couple of videos ago, we looked at bank rollouts like, what was it, PNC and BPCE in France. Well, yes. Texas Impact comes from, unlike those, Texas Impact comes from its legitimacy. Yeah, and the amplification of that. So it's basically, the way I look at it is it's telling the citizens of Texas, investors, policymakers, that Bitcoin is acceptable at the state level. So it sets a precedent for other states to follow, especially those with strong energy or mining industries. However, the effect on actual Bitcoin flows is limited, as you called out, David. Doesn't onboard millions of users, doesn't reduce friction, or doesn't create daily demand. So that's why it ranks below those institutional access stories like PNC, like BlackRock, like Schwab, etc. So Texas doesn't move liquidity today, but it dramatically strengthens the narrative for Bitcoin and that it belongs as part of the government's reserve assets. It says that this could, but you can't yet put a certainty figure on it, which is why it's not above a 5, snowball into a handful of other states trying to replicate it. So yeah, it's a really, really solid news event that I think was actually surprisingly looked over by a lot of the mainstream media news. I think that because the main sort of like steam had been taken out by Texas actually going ahead with the reserve, I think that when they actually made their first purchase, it was kind of like, oh, old news, or maybe people didn't understand the implication of it. But watch what they say, watch what they do, not what they say. And the fact that Texas has done it is a big thing. The problem that it does create, and the other reasons the tool has scored it down, is that obviously there's a risk that obviously creates political backlash. You are starting to see crypto more thoroughly aligned with Republicans and the Trump administration, so there is that risk. And obviously, anytime you get a big player involved, it does create that concentration risk and centralization risk. So, but yeah, it's a major event. I would continue to watch Texas, but mainly for the fact that you want to start watching what other states do. Are they going to allocate further? Are they actually going to follow through with that direct allocation to Bitcoin? And that's the other point that I didn't state that the tool has pulled out, is that obviously this score will go up. It says here, likely towards a 5.5 to a 6 if they actually go ahead and move out of IBIT and into direct Bitcoin.
Yes, I want to pick up on that, because moving from an 8.3 to a 4.6 down to 4.6 is, that's quite a knockdown. I think if there was any self custody of the Bitcoin, meaning the state self custody it would score higher, definitely, because for a Bitcoin purist, a Bitcoiner, it's not as strong as it could be.
Yeah, I agree. So we've got one more story for today, but it's kind of along the same veins. Now, Indiana has introduced a landmark bill that would mandate Bitcoin ETF options in all public pension plans, legally protect self-custody rights, and prevent local anti-crypto restrictions, and, importantly, shield residential and industrial mining. So therefore, it would make it one of the most comprehensively pro-Bitcoin states in existence. So, in terms of the narrative, the manipulation level is low. The reporting is policy heavy across most of the articles that the tool has reviewed. The emotions evoked are obviously optimism, empowerment, rebellious federalism, which I like that it picked up on, first in the nation mandate, the pension access plus self-custody plus mining protection plus system level reform. It's hitting so many different narratives, which Bitcoiners love. And it's got strong political momentum across states, which obviously reinforces the sense of an accelerating national trend. Obviously, we just looked at the Texas story. Well, although it's not the same thing as reserve, obviously pensions are highly conservative, so it does really feed into that. Now, in terms of the facts, so the bill is obviously HB 1042, and it has been formally introduced, publicly documented, text published, and politically viable within the Indiana legislature. But here's the thing, it's still early stage. So Indiana would become the first state to mandate Bitcoin ETF options in all public pension plans, and the bill also permits direct crypto-linked ETF investments for multiple state funds. Now, residential and industrial mining would receive explicit legal protection, aligning with Texas and Wyoming norms, and pension mandates would create immediate, predictable baseline demand for Bitcoin ETFs, all those passive flows, lovely passive flows flowing into Bitcoin. So the pension flows in the US remain one of the largest untapped Bitcoin institutional demand sectors. So once again, first state to put forward a bill to mandate it. Wow. What are we thinking, David?
Wow. Well, I'm picking up on the keyword mandate. Before it was allowing, right? Before most of the kind of regulations were centered around giving permission. the investors or to the public. But now this is a mandate. So
it's mandate Bitcoin options. So it's not mandating that all pensions must buy Bitcoin. It's just mandating that all pensions must give their those options to their customers.
Got it. Yes, that's thanks for explaining or clarifying, because if you just read the headlines, you kind of buy into this hype as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and most people separate the words Bitcoin ETF options from Bitcoin ETF.
Yes.
So you just read mandate Bitcoin ETF.
That's a really good distinction you're making. But what it's also kind of clarifying is that a lot of the public are concerned about their pensions and the stability of the economy and of their future, right? So this calls out, we want to support your ability to protect yourself in case of an economic collapse. So I think this is quite bullish because it actually allows the public to be able to secure their future with Bitcoin. So I would score it a 3.
Well done. Spot on. Very, very close. I'll give you that one on the net. I'll call that one on the head. So obviously it's meaningful because it does push Bitcoin into the US retirement system. It's one of the largest pools of capital in the world, and obviously the impact is still limited since it's the only state level and not yet. It's only a state level, and also it's not yet law. Once again, I said it's only been proposed. Even once a bill is proposed, even if it gets through, it doesn't mean that it's going to get through without amendments. There's a lot in that bill. So obviously the narrative is a 7.8. It's very strong. The reality is if it went through in its current form, it would be very, very good. It would be a 6.4, even though obviously Indiana isn't a huge state. But the fact that it is early doors is going to limit the score. So allowing pension participants to allocate to Bitcoin and guaranteeing their right to self-custody does send a strong directional signal, especially for the older and more conservative investors, which obviously you mentioned, David, who've never viewed Bitcoin as a retirement asset before. And obviously they, despite maybe being a bit older and a bit reluctant, they still have the same need. They do want to protect their future and make sure it doesn't get eroded away. But because the bill is still in the legislative process, nothing actually changes today. So when you see bullish headlines like this, think about, when does it come in? No pensions are buying Bitcoin right now. No new products are being offered right now. No new flows are going to occur until it passes committees, it faces amendments, and survives political scrutiny. So it's more impactful than noise stories that we've seen, like in our previous videos, or negative regulatory narratives, because it has the potential to unlock meaningful long-term adoption if replicated in other states. But it still ranks lower than other things because it's an idea, it's a concept, it's got a long way to go, and obviously the size of the state is going to reduce the score. But being the first to propose it for, as David said, extremely conservative pension systems, big move. And especially to say, hey, within our state, you've got to any pension fund, you've got to offer it. You've got to offer that product. It has just as much right to be in that pension offering as gold, as stocks, as bonds, as anything else that's offered in there.
And they could be considered as negligent not to offer this exposure within a pension, right? That, I think that's the perception is, if you're not offering this to us, allowing us to protect our future, you're doing us a disservice, right? But this is another example of the escalation in the state level Bitcoin arms race, right? This is game theory at play.
You don't want to be the last one to jump off the ship. Yeah, you want to make sure that you've got one foot in the door, in case to keep your options open. So that if you need to run, if you need to move quickly, you can run out that door. And that's why, obviously, you can see the things to watch that the tool has recommended watching. But mostly, I would point out two things. I would be looking at the governor's stance Does the governor actually talk about it? Is he actually promoting it? Is he talking against it? And then I would just look for any committee hearings. And obviously the tool is monitoring for those things as well. So the moment there is a change in this story, once a week, we'll try to give you updates across the biggest stories that we cover across the past few weeks to tell you if there's been any movements. We'll call them out and we'll show you if the scores have now readjusted. But otherwise, yeah, I would, if you're interested in following this, I would look for those two things. David, any final thoughts? You're from the US. What would you say the appetite is out of 10? Have you seen a difference overall, either at a federal or state level over the past 3-4 years?
Yeah, tremendous support. I think since Trump was voted into power again, that a lot of the states have been very vocal in their support of Bitcoin. And it's very much a political move, but I think what we're seeing more clearly in Texas and in other states like Florida, New Hampshire is another example, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Missouri, all these states, they just want to protect their citizens and their voters, right? At the end of the day, they're voters. They want to protect their buying power, their ability to purchase and to earn a living. And they know that they're going to get more votes and be voted into power again if they continue to support this emerging asset class. So,
absolutely,
yeah, I think it's very strong.
To put it in context, I mean, I know that in the UK there are challenges with doing anything with Bitcoin and pensions. I'm not sure whether it's possible. If you're in the UK and you're watching this, please let us know. And obviously to see moves like this coming out of the strongest economic power in the world, and even if it is just a small state, is massive. What I would say is for Australia, what I found interesting, just worth bringing up, is that even though it's investing in Bitcoin through pensions, traditional pension options is difficult, Australia has a very unique system for its superannuation, which is their retirement funding, which is basically you can take a self-managed fund. Yeah, you can apply for one, which is basically you have control over your investments. And remarkably, from what I'm told, you're able to actually purchase the Bitcoin and take full self-custody, provided you submit to audits and proper accounting techniques, which that ideally is what we want to see with all retirement accounts. That's what I would like to see. That to me is the end goal, is people taking complete control over their financial future and not trusting third parties, which is the principles that Bitcoin was built on. So I would love to see that.
That's incredible. I think you're very fortunate in the country to be able to have access to that ability to self-custody.
Yeah. And on that note, guys, like, I think that's a perfect time to remind you that if you don't keep your eyes on what these different states are doing, you are going to be the ones who are going to risk missing it. Because don't forget, most people will miss it. Most people will mock it. And most people will wait until it's too late. But the 1%, they act with conviction.
Be a 1%er. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.